Do you want to go ahead and get started since it's 10 o'clock?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. My name is Francesca Vega. I'm the director of the Cultural Districts program. Just so you know, everybody is on mute and without a camera. Questions will be monitored in the chat, so feel free to ask questions there. Also, Amy will be open to a dialogue at the conclusion of her presentation, so we can take people off mute and turn your cameras on. And with that, I will turn it over to Amy.
Great. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Like I said earlier in the chat, I'm super laid back. This is going to be fun, and dialogue is totally welcome. So we're excited that you're here. So when Francesca asked me to do this, I was a little bit like, are you sure you mean me? Because we're all our own worst critic. But I'm excited because this particular board that I get to work with truly is one of the best examples of getting work done that I've seen in quite some time. And so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our history and how we've gotten to where we are today. And like I said, if y'all have questions along the way, feel free to ask. So a little bit about me. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this, but I've been in the position of Main Street Director for about 5 years. And so in the city of Ruston, that falls under the municipal hat. And so we're a little unique in that we have the city as well as a nonprofit called Friends of Ruston Main Street, which is our Main Street board, and our cultural district board. So we have two nonprofits that we work with very closely as part of the work that we do here. So that could be a little confusing to some people, but it works for us. And so anyway, you'll kind of learn a little bit more about that as I talk and go along. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys, and we'll get started. So you can see here that we have this incredible title. So the main thing I want you to hear throughout our presentation today is that, yes, we are a nonprofit board. Yes, we do work, but really we have so much fun along the way. And so that's kind of where my title down there says having a little and really a lot of fun along the way. You'll get to see some of that as we talk through the points today. So a little bit about myself. Like I said before, I'm the Main Street Director and Community Coordinator for the City of Ruston. I also work within the city under the umbrella of economic development and do a lot of our work with retail, small business retail in the city. So I do some recruiting with that outside of the downtown area and work closely with the mayor on those projects. And so that's one of the extra things that I get to wear, but it's a super fun part of it. So just to do that. I do have two kids. They are 19 and 22, and they both go to Louisiana Tech University. Bolton just graduated this spring and is going to head back into school. So I'm raising lifelong learners is what I like to tell myself. But I don't know how long we're going to lifelong learn, but we'll see how that goes. We have 3 dogs, Jenny, Bee, and Margot, and they're our little fun pets. I'm married and we have lived here most of our married life. We did a little quick hiatus for about 5 years to St. Louis, Missouri, and then we also lived in Baton Rouge for a little bit of that time. And then we worked really hard to get back here. So my kids were basically raised here in Ruston. I went to school here. I grew up in Shreveport, so a little bit kind of all over the place, but we love living here. It's a feeling of connection that's hard to explain. You just have to experience it. So if you've lived in a place before where you had those connections, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But we love it here because we can go to the grocery store and see people we know. We know people at dinner. And it really helps me in my job because a lot of the times when I'm thinking about people to help do certain things, or to get excited or encourage others, it's easy for me to find those people because of those relational connections that we have. And so I think knowing those people and knowing about our community really helps in my job in particular. And I just like living here. So it's really cool. So just an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk a little bit about kind of where we started and how we started. We'll talk about how we developed our board over the last 5-ish years, maybe 6-ish years. board ownership and what that looks like, our goals, and then how we have fun. So super fun, easy stuff. So just a little bit about the Ruston Cultural District. It's basically the same footprint as our downtown district. It's our historic downtown and cultural district all wrapped in one. Our city attorney likes to make fun of me and say that I've managed to put so many districts in such a small space. And every third, fourth time I call him, he's asking if I'm calling to establish a new district, which I am not. So that's always a fun thing. But our cultural district's mission is to celebrate, embrace, and promote our local visual, performing, literary, and culinary arts, as well as folk life. Through special events, promotions, and projects, we hope to bring more cultural experiences and opportunities to the cultural district and in downtown Ruston. So that's where we started as our mission. So when we sit around our table and we discuss all the things, we're always really going back to, does this serve our mission? And does it serve the purpose that we have set for ourselves? So that's our first thing that we really did, was to sit down and envision and plan for that. So that's where we get started. When we first started, like I said, we're sort of a unicorn out there with the two different boards. So we had established a historic district, we had established a Main Street district, and then when we looked into the cultural district aspect of the city, the mayor and the team at the time really saw that it would be a good fit for the work we were already doing, especially when it came to historic revitalization, with the tax credits and seeking developers and people to come in to that downtown area. The cultural district really gave it what we needed to invite those people to come in and get those buildings revitalized and to work on those projects. So we started in about 2017 with this board. I was not here at the time, but they really focused on those goals, was to bring those cultural aspects to this area. And so when we started talking about building a board, we started talking about those people in our community who really exemplified these different pillars. And so we talked to people who were in the visual arts business, performing arts, who were part already of our downtown community, whether they were business owners or people who were just really interested in seeing the ideas and things that we were doing come to life and be sustainable. We needed people who knew how to fundraise. We needed legal representation because we really didn't know what we were doing. And I don't know if any of you had that happen before, but when you start something new, you just don't really know the right ways to turn or go. And so that's a really important piece of that puzzle. Real estate was important to us because we wanted to make sure that the buildings and things that we were looking at made sense. And we wanted to have those experts at the table. It's also always helpful to have banking and financial people at the table. They help a lot of times with knowing marketing dollars are out there, but they also help you connect to other people who are maybe interested in the projects that you're doing or those kinds of things. So it was really good. So that's kind of the board that we were hoping to start with. And that's really what we did. We started with those people and individuals who represented those areas. And we rolled with those same people for the first 3 years. And they did a fantastic job of laying the foundation for the work that would be ahead for us. So that was our dream team. Throughout that, life happens, right? So some people were getting asked to be on several different boards and they were having a bit of board fatigue. Some people were ready to roll off and do something new because a lot of times when you start a new board, you have those visionary people who are really excited about like growing it and getting off the ground. And then they're like, here you go, it's yours. And so we had a lot of those people who were ready to kind of roll off and see what happens next. And so when we began to really think about who we wanted to be on the board the next go round, we started to ask ourselves what we were missing at the table. We always, like I said, go back to that mission statement and want to talk about like who would bring different values and different things to the table. And so, like I said, early days, attorneys were important. We were working on our bylaws. We were working on board insurance and all of the gross, awful, boring stuff that you have to do in boards. But as we moved forward, we knew that we didn't really have a literary representation. We didn't have a huge amount of diversity at the table. And so we began to prioritize what was important for us and what we wanted to see moving forward. And so the great thing about a small town, and typically, all of these little organizations are at least in a community that is smaller, part of a larger town, is that you know the people. And if you don't know the people, someone else at the table knows the people. So we have found storytellers, and we have found visual artists, and we have found that representation that we were missing. And now they're sitting at the table. And so it's really blossomed into this great group of people who bring so much cultural asset to the table just individually, but they're also able to take what they do and multiply it so that our community sees those things happening, and they see all of the good stuff that's just part of our DNA. And so as we think about cultural districts specifically, I think we make this reference a lot in Louisiana, but we think about the gumbo and we think about all the things that go into the pot. And so as I'm like big picturing what the work is that we're doing, I'm always thinking about who's next and what's next. I was talking to Francesca before we started the webinar, and my kids have grown up with me thinking this way, but I always am looking for younger people who feel so passionate and so excited about the things that we're doing, because they're going to be our next board members. It's hard to imagine a board that's just the same people for years and years and years. A lot of us on this board would say it's hard to imagine a board that's different than what we have now, because it's like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich that goes together so great, and it's just perfect in every bite. But there's always room to change and grow, and we are changing and growing in ways all the time. So there has to be that person on the board, and it could be the director, it could be another person that just says, hey, we're missing this, or we're looking for this, or all of those things. So the main thing is as you're looking for your board, remembering that first level is the foundational level of your board. You want those people who buy into what you're doing, who understand your goals, and who help you set that mission and get everything really kind of ready for that next springboard. And we're in that little middle section right now. The Ruston Cultural District is in that middle piece where we know what we are and who we are and what we want to do, and we have the right people at the table to figure out how to do that. But they're also the right people at the table that can figure out, okay, it's time for me to step back and give it to this person, because in 5 years we want to go down this road, and they're going to be that person to help us get to that next level. So whether it's, your artists, your musicians, your marketing professionals, whoever you need next, no matter who it is, we are a working board. And so I think a lot of times what I'll hear from other people who have nonprofit boards is the executive director gets all of the stuff and it's just piled on, and the board has great ideas, but there's no follow through with the board. And so a lot of times as directors, we can get bogged down in these are such great ideas and we're going to do this and my board expects me to do this. But really what we have to do is we have to figure out who those people are, what their gifts are, and we have to give them permission to run with those projects. And so that's really the big gift of this board, is that they think of the ideas and they actually do the work. And so there's something magical about that as a director, to have a board that will do that. But there's also something intentional as a director to have a board that will do that. And so really, as you're creating your board, even if you have a board that has been in existence for quite some time, if you don't have the people who will do the work, it's probably time to do some reevaluation. And it's probably time to really invest in those relationships so that you can communicate to those people why it's important that they do the work. Now, I'm going to say a couple of other things about that later, but just let's hold right there for right now. So this is just to reiterate that idea. Our board members have these abilities. These are not all of our board members, but we have a visual arts person. So one of our projects or committee ideas was the Bold Art Project. So when I have a visual arts person who knows how to do an artist call, who can recognize when an artist is capable of the work, who can recognize who those artists are in our community to share that information with, that equals success. And it's down the road for all of the same things. If you have a person who's a marketing person, they're in charge of your social media, and you can trust them with it. And so that's important. If you have someone who loves fundraising, our project was their puppy project, and they took that and ran with it and raised thousands of dollars for our nonprofit because it was something that they enjoyed doing. And it's a one-time project. For performing arts, we had Poetry Out Loud. And, we had a theater person who was really interested in another project. And that was actually one thing that I brought to the table, but I'm not a performing arts person. And so having that performing arts person at the table that grabbed that vision and held onto it with me and saw it through to the end was invaluable. And so those are the kinds of people that can be in place so that those projects are successful. But with that in mind, since I brought that to the table and I'm not that person, it's so fantastic to have people that will share that vision. It's not fantastic to have an idea, to put it out to the table, nobody takes it, and you're frustrated because nobody took it. So there's a lot of ebb and flow in those relationships and conversations. And sometimes we just have to realize that it's just not time for that project. And so if there's no one to take it and run with it, then don't do it right now. You can table it for a little while. You can shelve it. If it's something you're really passionate about and want to come back to it, do that. But have the conversations before you get into the process of doing those events or those promotions or whatever they are, because if you get halfway through, you're going to only be frustrated by the fact that there's no one to help you carry that torch. And so as a director of the organization, if no one had picked up Poetry Out Loud, I would have been terribly disappointed. So sad. But I would have been more disappointed if I ran with that myself without the ability to see it to the end and had a bad result. And so I think that's the big advice for executive directors and directors to remember, that it just may not be the right time for you to do a certain thing. And also to have the organization and the board members realize that too. We have had some brainstorming sessions with some incredible ideas that we haven't done yet. But everyone around the table understands because we only have a certain capacity. And I think that's a huge communication piece of your board, to be able to be mature enough together to say, this is a fantastic idea and we need to do this one day, but now it's not the right time. So I think that's a big part of the puzzle for us. So the other piece is we have visionary people. They're incredible. And they're really, really good at visionary things. Sometimes I'm that person, sometimes I'm not. But those people are the ones who have to have that vision. And then I try to get them on the organization and coordination of those events, because sometimes they're the very ones who need to see that this is not realistic for this time. And so if they can organize it and coordinate it and it's good, then it's a success. So that's the way that we like to look at those things. So I've been to several meetings lately where we've had to talk about goal setting. And I am personally wanting to set these goals that are really big because I like well, I'm just going to be really honest. I like for it to look like we're doing good stuff. And so I want it to be really big, cool, amazing projects. And I want someone to be like, wow, they really know what they're doing up there. And so I have to rein myself in a lot of times when it comes to goal setting, because the reality is you can only do so much. And the other reality is if you don't have a good foundation and you don't have a good plan, then you're probably not going to be successful. And so what was that goal setting about if you're setting goals that are unattainable? So I kind of, as I was working through this presentation, it was really great for me to talk to myself about that very conversation and really look back and say, in the first year, our only job was to get this board in place and to get our name out there. and to have one or two things happen and then figure out what was going to happen the next year. There's no one expecting you to be like, just because it's the Olympics right now, no one expects you to be a gold medal winner when you have just gotten started. That's not going to happen. So be realistic about what you're doing and the goals that you're setting. If you are a long time established board and you're way out of your first 5 or 10 years, maybe taking some time to reflect on where you came from, where you've been, and what's next. But you can still do that in baby steps. So that's kind of my encouragement for you here in goal setting, is to set goals that are realistic and attainable. Even if you have to pull back on what you're doing, making sure what you're doing is something that you're doing well is more important than a big lofty goal that you can't meet. So in our 5 years time period, which is kind of where we are right now, we're ending that little time period. Our main focus was to support the culture of the community, to support the community and partner and promote the culture in our district. We really have focused on hosting one big project, one big event. We wanted to create our district that promoted vibrancy and told our story, so that people could walk into our district and learn a little bit about who we are, even if there was no one there to tell them about it. And so I think that is one of the things that we've really focused on, is that when you come into our district, you can tell the things that we are passionate about. It's public art. It's our history and our historic buildings. It's our food and our restaurants and those things. And so when you come to Ruston, you know what we're about before anybody even opens their mouth. And so that was really important to us. It's also important to us that people know within the community what we do. And so if you do happen to talk to us, you know that we support the art, we support preservation, and we support our cultural assets, which we consider our people and our place. And so those are the things that we're always going to partner with, we're always going to stand up behind, and we're always going to be a part of. So it's my hope that there's not something that happens in our district that doesn't have our name on it somewhere. So if it is, our NICLAC arts market, or our NICLAC something, we're going to support, the winner for a category for something, or we're going to support a culinary event. So those are the ways that we get in there and we support the people. That doesn't always mean that we're doing all of the work, but they feel our support in other ways. So that's been a really good thing for us. 10 years will be in 2027, which is crazy and hard to believe. So we're working through kind of what that vision looks like for our 10 years. A lot of it will be the same as what we've done in the last 5 years. But there's a lot of things that we're working on that will be more impactful and more important for our community. And so as we work through those 5-year timelines, we would just want to make sure that we're always moving forward and we're always adding just a good, that we're providing something for our community that is helpful and that really shows what we're about. And so I don't really know what those are going to look like just yet because we haven't fleshed them all out, but big stuff, big fun things, and we're looking for those people to sit around the table for those next 5 years to carry those out. So that's where we are there. So I said it was a little bit about fun too. So a lot of the work that we do is programming geared, and that's hard, especially when you have people at your table who are artists or who work at a bank or who are an attorney or who are a realtor, a nonprofit director, and the community theater person all wrapped into one person. And so I said a little bit about this, and I'll say a little bit more about this right here. We cannot expect our board to do everything. It's our job as the director to kind of help navigate and manage things. But we have to work together to make sure that things happen. So yes, while I would love for someone to take it and run with it, it doesn't always happen that way. We're in the middle of a project right now where we have 2 different committees working, and I'm constantly in communication with those committees to make sure that I haven't dropped a ball. And so Poetry Out Loud is a fantastic example of one of the things that we've done. Tammy Alexander is our board member who is a member of RCT. She's also a realtor. She's also on a nonprofit. She works for another nonprofit in town. So she is a busy human. But she took this and she ran with it like nobody's business. And so the story of Poetry Out Loud and the Ruston Cultural District is that I was at an event in Shreveport where they did a Poetry Out Loud event, and I was moved beyond words. Francesca will vouch for that. Leah will vouch for that. I cried, and it was an amazing experience for me that I had to bring back and somehow articulate to these 7 people at my table. And Tammy was immediately bought in. We all were, but Tammy was way bought in. We had a competition here. We went to the regionals. Christian Locke, who you'll see in that first picture here, advanced from regionals to state. He won state, and then he advanced to the top 9 in the country. Now, that is a huge, incredible deal, and not something that any of us really expected our first year in Poetry Out Loud. But because we were willing to talk about it at the table and figure out how we could make it happen, that was the result. I don't anticipate that for every year of our existence, but we were really, really excited to see something come to the table and actually make it that far in such an incredible way. The next picture there is of our mayor and one of our business owners at our Bulldog auction. That project was actually started before COVID, and we were really hopeful that we were going to get to auction these Bulldogs off, but because of all of the bumpiness of the COVID years, that's what we like to refer to them now as. We did not have that until later in the process. So that's a great example of, hey, this didn't really go like we thought it was going to, but we're still going to make it happen. That event right there was super fun. You can see the Bulldog to the far right, and that was one of the Bulldogs, and actually the Bulldog that they bid on, the man with the paddle right there. And that event for us raised a little over $71,000. And so that was a huge event for us. We have done an Out to Lunch concert series. We've done other art projects. You can see the puppy there was another one of our fundraiser projects. And then Camellia Giles right there in the middle is painting one of our transformers. We got a Louisiana Department of the Arts grant for transformer boxes in our downtown and cultural district area. And so we're doing constantly things that will bring more art, music, food. We're just layering stuff all the time into that district. We ourselves provided some startup grant opportunities for people within the district. And so we had a $500 stipend for people who had fun ideas of something that had never happened in the district before. People took us up on that offer, and so we had an art walk happen. We had one of our local businesses had an artist design vinyl for their windows and put up the vinyl. It was an incredible art installation for that business. We've had lots of other people do tons of other incredibly creative things with a very small budget. And so the money that we raise goes to those kinds of things in art enhancement for the city. Erica right there and me are in Dothan, Alabama in that picture. Another Bulldog project challenge was that our Bulldog manufacturer was, after COVID, highly focused on getting pieces and parts across the country for oil and gas, and so Bulldogs were not their priority. But it was our priority, so we had to find someone else to make them. So we traveled to Dothan together, where they make peanuts and boll weevils and all sorts of public art animals, and we figured out that that was our next manufacturer. So we brought those back. We've got our next round happening. The artists actually have them in their possession now, and so they're working diligently on those Bulldogs, and then we'll have our next auction in September. So it's a fun project that we get to do. Another way, and I've said, we support art in every way that we can. We have our iconic Ruston mural. A lot of times when you'll see Ruston pictures, you'll see this mural here. It had faded, and it was time for a refresh, and so we partnered with the Friends of Ruston Main Street, our Main Street department here at the city, as well as the CVB, to have that mural completely redone. So some of the funding that we raised was able to go back directly into that public art project for the city and bring that mural back to life. It was the first one that we did, and one that everybody loves to take pictures with. And so we saw that as a priority, especially for our district, not only because we wanted it to still be there, but how can you say that you support the arts when something in your district is faded and not pretty anymore? And so we really made that a priority and made that happen. So we're really excited. We got the 2 original artists to come back and to do that refresh. And so we were excited to be a part of that. I've talked a little bit about all these projects, and so I'm not really going to talk much more about those. Cultural Eats was something that we did for our pillar of culinary. And so we early on did like a progressive dinner throughout downtown and had people go to different spots and have different experiences with food and drinks and music. And so it was a great way for us to have kind of establish who we were within the community with an event so that people understood and really related us to culinary arts and theater, poetry. So that's why projects are important and why what we do are important, because when they think Ruston Cultural District, they don't think the boundaries, they think the things. And so that's really what I wanted to say there. A lot of times you will have boards and board meetings that you are not excited about going to. I've served on several of those boards. They're not fun. And I would find any excuse not to go to the meeting. I don't think we have that issue with this board. And the reason is because these people are incredible. They have hard jobs. They're business owners. Like I said, they're business owners. They're musicians. They're teachers. They're bankers. They're all of the things. But they have made this a priority. And so no matter what's going on in the rest of the world, they come and sit at this table and we talk through the fun stuff that we're going to get to do to make our community better. So they serve and they love this community and they work hard. Those are the things that they do. They're ultra talented. For all of them, I would say that probably I'm the least artistic in the bunch. They are all creative, which is an interesting situation at a boardroom table when you have a bunch of creatives at the table, because we have lots of thoughts and ideas, and not all of them get to come to fruition, but a lot of them do. And so a lot of times those creative talents will complement one another, and so it works well with those people. The next thing is they're real. We don't have people on the board because of their title or because of who they are in the community or because of whatever. While we do have a lot of the people in our community who have those titles who are also genuine and real, this genuine realness brings something to our board that I think is very valuable, because it is what our community wants to see and hear. And it's very like a transparent relationship. But not only that, like I just think that having those real people who can like speak to my crazy idea and be like, you've lost your mind, Amy, and me not take it in any other kind of way other than you're exactly right, let's pull back. Those are the people that I want on the board. So that's important. We do a lot of great things, but it's not always easy. And so I just want to say, if you are struggling with things that are hard or it can be anything. Life gets hard. These are the reminders that I want you to think about. And I tell them this pretty often. We can only do as much as we can do, and that's enough. My husband reviewed this with me, and he's like, I'm going to need you to read that for yourself 7 more times before you tell other people this. So I'm trying to read it to myself as well. But don't forget that. Like, people have no expectation of what the Ruston Cultural District does. Those expectations that we set are expectations that we put on ourselves. And when we feel anxiety about not getting something done by the 15th of August, we're putting that anxiety on ourselves. Talk through it. Figure out how you're going to get it done. Don't not do it, but figure out how you're going to get it done in a way that doesn't bring anybody stress. We have enough stress in the world. We have enough stress going on. And what we can do is what we can do. So just remember that. One of the cool things, and I say this a lot, this particular group of people, we weren't all friends before we got to the table, but now we are. And so sometimes we come in for a board meeting and I can tell something's not okay, something's not, somebody's off. So we address the humanness of ourselves before we address anything else for anybody else. It doesn't bring drama to the table. I don't mean in that way. But if someone is not okay, we talk through it. If someone is having a bad week, we spend a little time on that. If someone needs encouragement, we give each other encouragement. That's not something that you can create. That's not something that you can plan for. That's not something that you can calendar, that is just something that happens when you become a group of people that are connected in relationship. You can bring people into that. So the fear of losing that doesn't need to be there. People can come to that table and they can feel as welcome as everybody else. But recently we had one of our members' fathers pass away unexpectedly, and we spent some time on that. We talked about, how to support him and what to do. He feels so strongly about this that one of the ways that he supported us back through that is the family accepted donations to the Ruston Cultural District in his honor. So those things don't just happen.
Amy, I think your connection froze.
I don't know what just happened. Am I back?
I can hear you, but you're still frozen.
That's weird.
Well, considering okay. So you're out of share mode, but you're still frozen.
Okay, let me share again.
Okay.
Did that work?
Nope, your screen is no longer shared.
That's fun.
Well, thankfully, I have your presentation, so.
We're almost
Sorry,
done,
everyone.
so that's the good news. Did that work? No?
Mm-mm.
It still just got the dots. That's okay.
That's odd that we can hear you, but your screen is frozen.
Okay, well that's fun times. Well, literally that's my last slide before the word questions. So it's totally fine if we want to just go from there. Not a big deal.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what my last point was. Oh, the last point was to have fun. So that's just one of the things that is really important to me, is that as you do these things, don't take yourself so seriously that you cannot have fun with what you're doing. Life is just too short to not have fun. And so if you're not enjoying this, if you're not enjoying the projects that you're doing, reassess and really just try to figure out how to have fun doing what you're doing and making it better for your community. So I guess, like, to highlight the things, I just would say make sure the people that you have on your board are the right people. And that's sometimes easier said than done, and I do understand that, but make sure that it's going to fit the goals that you have set forth for your board. And then make sure that those people are willing to work for it. And not all the time and at all the things, but for the things that they're talented at. So use their gifts to do the work and then have fun along the way. So that's really my big piece. So I'd love to talk about questions that anybody has specific to boards. I didn't really go into a lot of the nitty gritty on boards, like as far as like bylaws and all that stuff. So if you have questions about that, I'm happy to talk about that too. But just let me know.
And you are unfrozen.
Awesome. That's perfect timing. Perfect. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Amy? Oh, Natalie does. Let me put her on camera. Allow mic. Allow camera. Maybe.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to unmute myself. I had my camera turned off because I'm literally in workout clothes, but here I am.
That's awesome. You're having fun.
Hey, Amy, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Good. So we have a cultural district in Bayou de Glace Cultural District. We have a board, but because we're so small and we don't do tons of projects, we are kind of in the process of like reconfiguring how our board functions. But I was just curious how y'all, I know you touched briefly on like prioritizing projects. I was curious if y'all had like a process for prioritizing projects. I feel like that's a challenge for me personally, and
Sure.
probably for everyone in this call, because we all have like a million ideas and we want
Huh?
to do them all. So I didn't know if y'all specifically, had a process or a system that you find has worked best for kind of focusing on what will work for y'all,
Sure. I would
at that moment in time.
Yeah. So what I would say to that is just go back to those fundamentals of, is it possible? Like how attainable is that project, and who's going to take ownership of it? Obviously, Natalie, you're going to take some ownership. You're the executive director. You have to. But like, who's going to help walk you along that project? And if you don't have that person, then it's probably not the priority, because it's not going to be successful without that buy-in. So, and it's hard for me because I have a little bit of an umbrella over me, because the mayor is like, hey, I saw this and, can we do something like this? And so I have someone who's directing me a little bit sometimes. And so not all the time, but sometimes that director is like kind of in there, and that helps.
Yeah.
So I think if you don't know, if you're at a point in your board where you're like, we don't know what to do next, which we kind of were at in COVID, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I was coming on board, COVID happened, like they had all these projects going on and they just weren't working because it didn't make sense at the time. And so it was hard to drop things like cultural eats when they had been so successful in the past. It was hard to drop things like construction. They had like a day where we had all the big things come from public works, like the tractors and the dump trucks and all that stuff, the police cars. But like, they didn't want kids climbing on the police cars during COVID. It didn't make sense. And so it was hard to drop those things and then be like fluid enough to think of other things that would work in that time. So we were kind of forced to think of those things. And so as we did that, and then the Bulldog project was kind of bumpy during those years, and that's why it didn't happen. And so what we did was we thought of the puppy project. It was something that anybody could do. We put an artist call out for anybody who wanted to do one. We didn't put any restrictions on it because we wanted to make the art for anybody who wanted to do it. So we had the puppies made. We did an artist call for people. Some of them were horrible and some of them were fantastic. And we just had to be okay with that. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of like the thing. You just kind of have to be okay with something, but do something. Don't just sit there because you don't know what to do. Do something that's easy, that will get your name out there and will get your creative whatever flowing, so that you're not afraid to do something else after that. I think a lot of times we're paralyzed by like, what if this isn't successful? Or what if we don't do good at this? Or why is that a priority? How do we explain that to people? Just do something. It doesn't really matter. Even if it's like a sidewalk talk day, if it's like, but just do something that brings people together, starts community, because somebody at that sidewalk talk is going to be like, hey, this is awesome. I really love to blah. And you'll be like, ooh, that's a great project. Do you want to be on our board in 2 years? So that's how that works. So just always be open to those thoughts and ideas, and make it easy, make it fun, and make it attainable. And I think that will kind of make those projects rise to the top. And as you do those easier projects, the harder ones are easier, because then you know who your people are on your board who are capable of those bigger things that are going to be the next bigger project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Do y'all have you mentioned, I heard you say 2 years. Do you do like limits on how long someone can serve on your board, or?
We do. We have a 3-year limit. Well, we have a 3-year term, and I think you can serve 2 terms. I think it's how I would have to really look, to be perfectly honest. Again, like, and that's something I want to say out loud too. Like, don't get tied up in the nitty gritty. Like, it doesn't really freaking matter. Like, it does, but it doesn't. Like, Tammy couldn't come to our board meeting last time. It's our 3rd one she's missed. Technically, in the bylaws, it's like, if you miss 3, you're out. So, I'm sorry, you're in charge of board trial. You're not off the board. So, like, yes, it works in your favor. Have those rules. Do the things, because there's some people you're like, oh, I can't wait for you to miss your 3rd meeting, because you're off the board. But you have to be careful about those things, and you have to be human about those things. There's always got to be room for compromise. There's always got to be room for all that stuff. So work that into your stuff. Be the kind of director that is just like open and honest and transparent and say, hey, you haven't been here in 6 times. Like, it's a problem. Like, we need somebody on the board that's going to do the work. I have one. He's a great human. Love him to death. He's too busy to be on our board.
Yeah.
He's great. He did some super projects. He says, hey, you're right. I don't need to be on the board. Let's fill that spot with somebody that needs to. So, but Tammy, I need her on my board, and she doesn't want to be off my board. So just be flexible in those kinds of things.
Sure.
So.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. Anybody else?
Yeah. We have any other questions? Also, sorry about the together mode. We cannot get rid of that. Okay, here's Amanda.
You there?
And can you hear me?
Yes, now
Yes.
I can.
Oh,
Hey, Amanda.
Hi, Amy. You kind of touched on this just now, answering that first question, but earlier in the presentation, you mentioned relationship building with the board in the context of it getting them more engaged
Sure.
and having those conversations. So I just wondered if you could talk a little more about that, because I'm real curious.
Sure. So do you mean like before they're on the board or when they're on the board? Because I think I talked about both.
Maybe both.
Okay. So if I don't know you, I'm sorry, but I know a few people on here, and you kind of know me. And so my spiritual gift, as I like to refer to it as, is the relationships. And so I really enjoy getting to visit with people and getting to know people. That's not everybody's thing. But in the case of board development, it is really a great asset to have. So if you can spend some time in the community, whether it's at a sidewalk chalk event or at a theater event or in a restaurant at the bar where you're just talking to somebody like randomly, like if you can spend that time with those people and learn just enough about them to learn what they love and what they do, the next time you see them, you can say, hey, how about this? A great example of that on our board for me is Jonathan Neal. Jonathan Neal moved here from Chicago. I don't know if you've ever been to Chicago or if you've ever been to Ruston, but they are not the same place. And so when I meet people who are here from different places, first thing I say is, how are you doing? Like, really, how are you doing? Because it's a huge culture shock. There's not a lot of things. There's not a lot of people. There's not a lot of traffic. It's like all the things that they're so used to. Like, you don't think about traffic being a thing, but like the noise of traffic is a thing. People miss it. Like, it's weird. You may not miss sitting in it, but you miss like that noise. And so I visited with Jonathan for about 5 minutes in the Dixie lobby at the theater on an art crawl day. And I said, hey, what do you do? And he is one of the band directors at Grambling State University. That's 2 miles down the road. And he was like, I need some place to be. Like, I need some people to fit, And so Jonathan's on our board. Jonathan has brought to our table access to musicians at Grambling, to student bands, to different organizations that he's involved with all across the country. It's been like a huge gift to our board to be able to say, hey, this is Jonathan Neal. He's one of our members. He does this, but he brings all this other stuff. He's quiet. He's reserved. He looks at me like I'm crazy all the time. I'm sure he thinks I am. But we have that great rapport, that great spot on the board. Since Jonathan's been on the board, Jonathan's bought his first house. Jonathan and his wife have gotten engaged. His fiance have gotten engaged. Like, it's all these things. And so that development of him as an individual on our board and our relationship is also important, because Jonathan doesn't want to come to my office every month to talk about stuff if he feels like I'm not invested in him as a person. And so I think that's also an important part of it. And so we invest in each other initially and as we get people on the board, but we also continue to invest into each other as we develop as a board. So it's not just about the cultural district work, but it's about us as people. And that's something that we often miss, I think, as like directors that like these people have all this other stuff going on in their life, but they choose to sit at this table for an hour a month and to do the work. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that they're loving what they're doing and that they're wanting to be there. So does that kind of answer that, Amanda? I don't know if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I love that. Thank you.
Sure.
Right,
I see.
Yeah, it looks like we have Evelyn and then Ellen. So
Okay.
I'm gonna do Evelyn first.
Okay.
Allow mic, allow camera. Okay, Evelyn, you're unmuted. You might be muted on your end and have to select unmute. There we go.
There we go. Good morning. Great to see you guys. You know, I'm not sure exactly where our cultural district is as far as board development goes. We're the Renoir Cultural District, and we've been working a lot with the Arts Council and a few other entities. I know we had a group of people that were meeting like every other month in developing the cultural district. I'm not sure where we are in board development, but we have been moving along in arts and culture projects and mural development to sort of brand the area. And you mentioned a project that you did with Transformers, not Transformers, the boxes.
Yep, the transformer boxes. Yep.
And the organization that I've been working with is the Red Stick Project within the cultural district. And we had like templates or mock-ups for Transformers and Transformer Project or the boxes. And one area where we sort of got caught up was what kind of paint. I mean, it's a trivial thing, but it's like, did it have to be heat resistant? Was it a wrap or, you know, so I was curious about that.
So that's a great question. And it like is such a point that reiterates kind of what I was saying before. Evelyn, I have no idea what kind of paint you need to put on a transformer box because I am not an artist. And so that is such a great point. We have on our committee Dylan Sanders, who owns an art supply store. And do you know who knows what kind of art to put on murals and transformer boxes? Dylan Sanders, because he owns an art supply store. So that is why it's so important that on your board, on your teams, on your committees, that you have experts in these different areas because they can figure that out. The answer is golden paint, by the way. And we have a whole thing that I can send you. If you'll send Francesca your email address, I'll send you our like artist stuff or the mural and different stuff, and I can send you what we recommend. But it is not because Amy knows what to recommend. I love art. I appreciate art. I want to be around all the art I can be around, but I'm not an artist. I do not know. And so having someone on your team that can do those kinds of things is so important. So whether it's theater, art, food, you don't want me to cook I mean, I can make spaghetti and meatballs, but that's about it. So, I mean, you know, you want those culinary people, you want those other people. And that is such a great point to bring up when you're working with those different people. So find this specialists and put them on your board as long as they're cool.
Ellen Ogden is about to come up with her question, and she's been recently working with us in with the Red Stick Project with a recent project that we have. Ellen might know the answer to that.
Yay!
I will also say the vinyl is getting to be popular as well because it's weather resistant, graffiti resistant. And Kadavian Baylor actually did a presentation on mural projects last month. That might be interesting to check out. I also know Lafayette's transformer boxes, they use vinyl wraps as well. But I'm gonna unmute Ellen and turn on her mic. Or camera, rather. All right.
Thank you, Francesca. Hi, Evelyn. Hi, y'all. Yeah,
Hi,
I'd be
Ellen.
happy. I was actually going to say Basin Arts Lafayette. I know they just went through the vinyl, and I'm aware of that because I am doing all these projects and trying to stay aware. So my question actually has to do with I've been asked to be on a board. So I was wondering, like, at what point and it follows up on Evelyn's, should an organization develop a board? Is it required of a cultural district? And the other part I've been torn about is that I have project ideas, and this is my mainstay. This is how I make my living, and I felt like it was a conflict of interest to join the board, because I need to seek funding for the projects that I'm developing and the labor that I'm putting in. So how do you set that, and from the other end of it, from an artist kind of perspective?
These are all great questions, and not anything that we haven't like had to kind of tread through ourselves, because a lot of times, like even in like these little districts, I mean, we're a small community within ourselves, and so when you are the artist and you're being funded by projects through the board like that, it's a little gray. And I'm like a stickler for the rules when it comes to like the ethics and all that stuff, because I work for the government and because I have all of those things. And so I think you just kind of have to trust your gut when it comes to that. And that can be a conversation with the board chair or the executive director. Yes and no. I mean, perhaps you abstain from voting on projects that would, include you as an artist, or, you still go through the process of application as an artist. I don't think that we have had anyone on our board do the art that we have done in the community. Jessica will have to check me on that, but we have one art supply store, and he's on my board, and so, but he's so valuable to the board. And so, of course, we say, get these paints, and we encourage people to shop local, but we don't say get these paints at Creative Exchange. So you really have to just be careful about how you go about that. But I applaud you for having that like inner barometer that says this just doesn't feel right. And so my advice would be, if it doesn't feel right, don't be on the board, but work alongside them in a committee capacity, work alongside them in another capacity, so that you're still involved in the work, but you're not sitting on that board. And then it's not quite so great, and you've protected yourself from having those feelings of icky. I don't like that. I don't like to lay down and feel like, I've done such good stuff, but I really shouldn't have been on that board, or I really shouldn't have done this or said this, or, whatever. So I think as much as you can, trust yourself and trust your gut in that way. And Francesca, she asked about the point of when you have to have a board for cultural districts, and you can answer that better than me.
Sure. Also, to the ethics question, I think a lot of organizations do have internal ethics policies. So that's something that you could ask the organization about. And most of the time, organizations are very understanding and, as Amy said, are appreciative of ethics concerns. So I would imagine they would be open to a conversation about that. In terms of boards or committees for cultural districts, there isn't a firm policy. It's highly recommended, just because it's very difficult for a liaison to do everything on their own. It is possible, districts do it, but it is not a firm policy for the cultural districts program. Also, I'm not sure if you wanted to answer Evelyn's question about what kind of paint to use on a transformer box.
Yeah, sure. There's some metal binding paint that Sherwin-Williams offers, and it essentially etches the metal as you apply it. But like Francesca said, a lot of places are moving to vinyl, and you can have just as great of an artistic expression than transferring a painting onto vinyl. So there's fun options now. Thank y'all very much.
Sure, thank y'all.
All right, looks like we have a tiny bit of time left if anybody else has a question. All right. Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time today. Appreciate you sharing your insight. Amy did not mention, but Ruston is one of the highest performing cultural districts in Louisiana. So that's why she was asked to speak today. So she's definitely a great resource. Feel free to reach out to her or me. Thank y'all.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.